Good evening, everyone. This is Leanne from Of Love and Shiplap and the founder of Sublimation Graphics and Tutorials here on Facebook. If you're joining us on YouTube, please be sure to come join our Facebook group. And of course, if you are catching us live on Facebook, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Those links are in the video description depending on where you are watching. Today, I'm going to be showing you guys how to create a watermark file and mockup in Silhouette Studio. Now, because Silhouette Studio is not really designed for graphic design, this is going to be a little bit simpler than the videos for some of the other programs. If you missed the video on Affinity Designer, you can find that, which we did last week, underneath the Affinity Designer topic tag in the group, as well as under the Affinity Designer Tutorials playlist on YouTube. This video will, of course, be under the Silhouette topic tag and playlist after it is live. I'm using Silhouette Studio Business Edition, but everything that I will be showing today can be completed with the basic edition. The only differences will be in how you export your file, and I will show you how to go about that. So first, I already have a new document open, and we don't really need to worry about resizing our workspace to any specific size. So I'm just going to leave it as it is. We're going to start by creating a rectangle, or a square, sorry, that's going to be the visual representation of the thumbnail that we're going to create. Now keep in mind that the majority of platforms online you're going to be using benefit best when you use thumbnails. That includes your social media pages, most websites, Etsy, and really anything else where you might post it is going to benefit most from having a thumbnail. We don't want to have large thumbnails. One, because most platforms are going to compress them anyways or not accept the larger size. And two, because anytime you put a watermarked item online, or any graphic online, quite honestly, you want to make sure that it's lower resolution to help make another step to deter digital theft. Now, watermarking your files is really important and something that you should be doing at all times to protect your work. And if you happen to have licensed your graphic or the background photo that you're using, you want to be protecting those artists' work as well. I see a lot of people who will consider watermarking their photos as just putting the logo down here in the corner where it's not covering any part of the design or the photo. And this is a very poor tactic because it's very easy for someone to crop out that bottom portion and then steal your photo. It also makes it possible that they can extract that digital graphic that might be on there. So if you happen to license a graphic, you are opening it up that people are able to extract that graphic for their own use. And they can also extract the photo that way as well. So just something to keep in mind, that the whole purpose of watermarking is to prevent digital theft. And then of course the purpose of creating mockups is so that you can showcase designs on different substrates for your customer base, and you didn't have to waste a whole bunch of materials, and you have much more professional looking photos, because most of us are not professional photographers, and quite honestly most of us are not even that good at photography. And we want to make sure that any platform that we're selling on, whether it's our own website or a platform like Etsy, we want our products to stand out, and a big part of that is having a professional looking product, which is where mock-up photos can be your saving grace. So let me just adjust the size up here, and you can adjust the size of any shape or element in Silhouette Studio by using the toolbar at the top, clicking on the transform panel, which is the one that looks like the 3 bars centered, or by simply clicking on the corner nodes and dragging it in and out. All right, so we have our square, and now we're ready to import our logo. So we'll hit File, Merge, and then we'll go ahead and select our logo, preferably one with a transparent background. And just for visualization, I'm going to give this rectangle a little bit of color. We'll make it yellow. All right. So I like to have my logo somewhere in the bottom corner. So just for the moment, I'm going to put that right there. And I usually put a background behind it. So we'll click on our shape tool again, and we'll just click and drag to create a background. Now this background does not have any fill, so we are going to click on our fill tool, fill panel, and we'll just select a color. I like the color white. You'll notice that this is on top of my logo, which is of course a problem. So we will click down here to our little arrow and open up the layers panel. And with this rectangle selected, we can see it right here. We can drag it down. Oop, we dragged it too far. There we go. So that it's behind our logo. And then you can, of course, also just right click and then select send to back, bring to front, bring forward, send backward as well. Next, we're going to need text, because remember, if we had any type of photograph here or design, we want to protect it with text. And if you've seen my personal watermarks on my website, I just have my business name in the same font all the way across it, but you can really put whatever you want. If you want something that's a little bit more generic, you can just do something like this. I like this one because I think it's funny. My layers panel's in the way. Let's decrease our font size here. There we go. I like everything centered, so we'll center it, kind of move this in. That little end bar creates the end of your lines. And then I'm just gonna right click and copy and paste so that it fills up our whole section. And then we can just kind of decrease it like this. Okay, now because Silhouette is designed to be a vinyl crafting program, everything that we create is going to have cut lines automatically added, which is what we see here around our text and our rectangle that is identified by the red line. Now this red line will absolutely save onto your photos if you do not make sure to remove it. So before we do that, we want to be able to see our text. So we'll click over here on our fill panel and we'll select a color for the text. I think just like a nice blue will work just fine. And then we'll click up on here to our cut lines and we will remove them like that. And we're also going to remove our cut lines from this white rectangle that we created. Now I'm just trying to use our yellow square as, again, a visualization tool to make sure that we have created the appropriate coverage for our watermark cover that we'll be able to save and use on any photo. So I've got my text layer selected and it's on top of my logo and this white box. And I actually want it behind all that. So we're just gonna drag it here in the layers panel. There we go. Now I like to make this rectangle partially transparent. So while we're in the fill panel, we'll go ahead and adjust our transparency. And then we're going to do the same thing for our text, but we're going to do much significant transparency because we want our text to just be very subtle on top of our graphic. Again, the yellow rectangle is just for representation purposes. Okay, so I put it at like 80%. You will find that with every photo that you import, whether it's one you took or it's a mock-up that was provided, you're going to have to make that adjustment every time. So I'm going to remove this square for the moment. I'm just going to move it over here. And I'm going to click and drag all of this and right click and group. So now this is ready for us to use. And you can actually save this so that you always have it. And you'll do that by, if you have Silhouette Business Edition, you will do this by going to File, Save Selection, Save to Hard Drive, and then you'll select either you want to choose the PNG version to preserve that transparent background. And then it's going to give you the option for the DPI and the pixels. Honestly, anything that's under 1,000 and around 150 DPI is perfect for a lower resolution. We'll make sure we select the transparent background and we'll just hit save. Now, if you don't have Silhouette Studio Business Edition, chances are you're probably going to be making your mockups in Silhouette as well, not just your watermark file. So you'll just want to save this to your library so you can access it at any time. And again, you would just do that. Click on File, Save Selection, and Save to Library. Give it a name, and then you'd be able to find it over in your library file to import your photos. So we have our watermark layer ready to go. So we'll hit File, Merge, and we're going to bring in a completed mockup. So this is one that was provided for us with a design. For example, if you purchase any of my designs from Of Love and Shiplap, you know that we include mockups. Pretty much for the last year, I've been including mockups. I didn't when I first started. So we'll just go ahead and select this week's freebie of the week. Now, I already take some precautions by making my mock-up photos lower resolution. That's why when we imported this, it only came in as a little over 3 inches. So I had made this square 6 inches, and our watermark file is 5.5 inches roughly. So we'll just go ahead and make this 6 inches as well. There we go. And then we want to move this behind everything else. There we go. So that our watermark appropriately covers it. Now, our watermark could use a little bit of resizing. So we can just go right ahead and click that corner node, stretch it up, and we're good to go. Now, the text is pretty good in terms of the transparency. It's enough not to be obstructing the view of the design or the shirt style, but is not so faint that someone could easily erase it out. And that's really what you're going for. Now, if you are using the basic edition, then there are 2 ways which you can export what's on your screen. You can do that by using the print screen tool or button, feature, hotkey, whatever you want to call it, on your keyboard. Print screen will take a screenshot of your entire screen, and then of course you will still have to crop out just your design. Or you can use something like the snipping tool or snip and sketch, which I'm using a Windows PC, so this is automatically included if it'll open. If you're using a Mac, I'm sure that there's some option that relates to that. Doesn't want to open because I'm on a live video. All right, well, while that's trying to open, I'll come back to doing, if you're using the free version of Silhouette, or actually anything under, oh, there we go. All right, so if you are using anything other than Business Edition, you won't be able to export your file. So like I said, you can do the print screen option, or you can use something like the snipping tool, or as you can see, this says snipping tool is moving, and there's a new version that I haven't downloaded yet. It's free if you're using a Windows PC, so that's what matters. We'll hit New Snip, and then you're just going to click and drag from the corner of your design, and you can File, Save As, and just like that, it is saved and ready for your website. And then if you are using Business Edition, you can export your files however you choose. So you would click and drag to make sure you've selected everything, and you would go to File, Save Selection, Save to Hard Drive. You would select the PNG type, and then you would just save it into whatever folder you would like. So, and same thing that I already mentioned, it's going to give you the option with the DPI and the pixels, and anything that's 1000 pixels or less or 150 DPI for a mock-up or watermarked photo is suitable because that is low resolution. And again, you're just trying to deter theft, digital theft of your hard work, of the person who created the digital graphic you might be using, or the person who took the photo. And honestly, if you read through the terms of use on the majority of designers' designs and even those who do these styled photography backgrounds, you're going to see that it says you have to watermark them to use them. So, you know, do yourself a favor and just take the time to do this because you're helping prevent digital theft, and it's more fair to the people who are putting in the time to make the digital graphics, make the mock-up photos, make those flat layouts, and so on. And of course, if it's your own work, you want to protect it as well. Next, I'm going to show you guys how to create a mockup. So keep in mind that you're not going to have the same diversity in features that you would have with a true graphic design program like GIMP, Inkscape, Photoshop, Affinity, or Corel. Your features are limited in Silhouette Studio because this program is designed for vinyl. I'm just going to move my picture. I'll just delete it because I don't need that. And I'm going to move my watermark over here just so it's out of the way. So I'll start by merging in a flat layout photo. You can find these on Etsy. You can find them on all of the main sites that we all like to get graphics and fonts from, like Design Bundles, Font Bundles, Hungry JPEG, Creative Fabrica. You can find mockup files on all of these websites, which I think is great. And most of them are pretty reasonably priced. I try and get ones that are around $2 or $3 and that I can use in mockups because not all of them have the same terms of use that I can use them in a mockup and then give them to you guys. So just something to keep in mind. I did provide some of my favorite Etsy shops in the video description for you guys to check out. Let's see. Unfortunately, you cannot use, I have some of these Photoshop mockups, which you can use in Affinity Designer. You cannot use these in Silhouette, so just keep that in mind. You're gonna have to basically just find those flat layout photos that are just PNGs and JPEGs, because that'll be the only thing that you can work with in terms of a mockup photo. All right, so we're just going to select one. Of course, it's going to import massive because these are high resolution. So we'll select this. We'll hit our lock aspect ratio, and then we'll just resize this. We wanted our height to be about 6 inches, so I'll go with the height, and then that'll make everything else easier. Zoom out so we can find it. There it is. All right, so once again, because Silhouette is not a program for graphic design, you are not going to be able to make modifications to this photo. Like sometimes in Affinity Designer, I'll play around with the brightness and the contrast, especially when I get one like this where the white is really very bright because of the lighting, and maybe I want to bring that down a little bit so that it, you know, looks more realistic. So just something to keep in mind. I'm going to take this square, and remember, we're trying to keep this watermark file that we made and our square of reference. We always want to keep these in our file so we can use them in the future. So we'll just right click and duplicate. And I'm just going to put one over here so it's out of the way. And this one, I'm going to go ahead and try and center this with my photo. So it looks like my photo could be just a little bit taller. Actually, let's do this. I'm going to send to back. And I'm going to fill this with no color so that it will be easier to see. A lot of times when you're creating mock-ups, you're going to find that you need to zoom in your photo in order to, so your customer can see the design better. This is pretty small. If the design was here, it would be a little difficult for someone who's trying to view your product and potentially want to buy it. So I find myself very often resizing or trying to create the space, the visual space, to something more like this. I mean, all of the props that are in the photo are great, the background is great, but people really care about the design. In Silhouette, we're going to want to be using the divide feature. So you need to have the shape you want to cut out needs to be below the object that you're cutting it out of. Hopefully that made sense. So we're going to, so that means we want the rectangle, because that's the square, sorry, that's the shape that we're going to cut out. We want it below our photo. So we'll right click on the photo and I'm gonna put bring to front. And then when we click and drag, see this gray line right here? That's showing us that we've also selected the square below this. We will click over on our modify panel and we will click divide. And ta-da! So this is why we made sure to duplicate our square so we'd have it for next time, because once we cut that, that's that. So we'll just delete this extra portion out that we don't need. And now we'll go ahead and import our design. We'll do File, Merge. And again, I'll just use this week's free file of the week. It's only Tuesday, so you have lots of time to grab this file if you have not. Once again, high resolution, comes in massive. We will click that lock ratio, and I'm sure that the width only needs to be like 3 inches at best. All right, so let's zoom in. I think that this is a pretty fair size for what we're working with, quite honestly. One of the things about mock-up photos, well, there's a couple of things. So first, you want to make sure that your placement, your photo, your design angle, and the sizing are all realistic to what your finished product would be. So first and foremost, this shirt is actually at an angle. A lot of people might not notice that, but I definitely can notice it. And so with that in mind, I just used my little rotate tool and I rotated this just a little bit to make it actually look straight on our shirt. In real life, the design might not actually be this big, but proportion wise, it is going to be this far from the armpits, this far from the collar line. So this is pretty much as adequate as you're going to get it for that. So we'll click on our fill panel, and then we're just going to adjust our transparency. Now you don't really need to go a lot. Something like 12, 13% to 15% is usually enough in Silhouette Studio. So I adjusted the transparency to 15%, and then that gives it a much more realistic look on your photo mock-up. So now, if you are using Silhouette to create mock-ups that you supply to your customers, this would be the point in which you would save. And once again, you would either do that with the snipping tool like I already showed you, or you would simply click and drag to select everything and hit File, Save Selection, Save to Library. If you're going to watermark it, you're then going to bring in your watermark, and we'll just right-click that and put Bring to Front, and we will lay it over top. Now, I think that the color opacity is perfectly fine for this particular background photo and design, but you'll find that you will have to make some changes depending on that background photo, the design that you're using, the mock-ups, etc. So to do that, you would just make sure you've got this file selected. There we go. and you would right click and ungroup, and then you would click on just the text, and you could go ahead and adjust that transparency. In your fill panel, you could change the color if you wanted to, just to kind of give you some ideas of how to customize that as you need. Now for me on my mockups, I generally alternate between either white text or black text depending on, again, that background photo and the design. Now we'll zoom out, and all we have to do is click and drag this and hit File, Save Selection, Save to hard drive if we want to export this. And you do have that business edition. I'll just save that there like that. And again, you'll get this pop-up. You don't have to worry about the transparent background when you're doing your final product because the whole background is filled. And then again, I don't know if the snipping tool will cooperate, but if you don't have the business edition so you can export your files, you'll either want to use that print screen tool or you will want to use the snipping tool. It always takes a minute to load on my computer, but I did show that at the beginning of the video. I think that that covers just about everything that you need to know for making a watermark file and a mockup in Silhouette. It's pretty straightforward, and I hope that this video was easy for you guys to follow. If you have questions, be sure to leave them in the comments below. And other than that, I hope you guys have a great rest of your night, and thank you for joining us.